Hey, this is Zac.
And I'm Clint, and we wanted to thank Exo-terra for sponsoring this episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Exo-terra is the industry leader in glass terrarium enclosures, and we are a big fan of getting to see the species we work with both at home and at the university.
We utilize Exo-terra caging here at Metazotics, and in addition to top quality terrariums, Exo-terra offers an array of heating options, lighting, supplements, decor, and truthfully anything needed or wanted when keeping reptiles.
Thank you, Exo-terra, for supporting Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. Zac here, as always, and my brother from another mother, Mr. Clint Bartley. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic, buddy. How you doing over there?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here tonight. Today was a very interesting day at work. Lots of emotions. People, we've reached that point in my semester where panic's starting to hit. Like the feeling of impending doom. I may not be able to pull my butt out of this scenario I find myself in. So,
where people begin to cry.
Yeah, there was some of that today, but it's okay. Everyone's allowed to cry. It's how we get through things. So, with that being said, though, I'm happy to be here tonight. Our guest tonight is someone who's very special to both of us. We have the other half of Zerkle Reptiles.
The better
Amy
half.
Zerkle. The better half, that's right. I'm 100% certain Rob would agree with that statement.
I'm positive.
Yes. But everybody knows Rob for the old worlds and the rat snakes. But many people also that follow the Zerkles know that Amy is really into garter snakes. And Clint and I were talking. We're like, we got to get a garter snake episode back in. And then, boom, Amy came to mind because that's where I got my Oregon red-spotted garter snakes from. So definitely worth discussing. So tonight, if you're a garter snake person, this is the episode for you. We'll be talking about red-spotteds, California red-sideds, checkers, a couple more projects, husbandry, you know, the whole kit and caboodle with the garters, Thamnophis. So I'm really looking forward to this because if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you know that this is a group of snakes that are near and dear to my heart. So that is that. But before we get into the episode, we have our updates. And we have a handful of CCR updates to give. So I think we should just jump right into that before people potentially bail on us. But nobody bails on CCR. Once you start, you go all the way to the end. But with that being said, I can't claim this. I can claim being shamed about this.
It worked.
It did work. It made me feel like a solid POS. And then I giggled. And then I reached out to you, and you're like, I just laughed all day.
I did. But, I just giggle every time I would see a notification that somebody liked that post. I just start giggling.
If you don't know what we're talking about, go to we'll let you find this on your own. Go to our Facebook page. Scroll till you see the little Mandarin rat snake and the deli snake and the deli cup, because the post isn't about me at all. It's about a Mandarin rat snake.
Just Vietnamese.
But anywho, let's quit beating around the bush, I guess. What do we have now, Clint?
So we have officially launched Colubrid and ColubroidRadio.com. That's right. The podcast has its own website now. And it actually is pretty exciting. And while there's still more that I think will build over time on it, I'd like to go through it and kind of just point out a few highlights, I guess, for me. So one, if you want to know anything about CCR, if you want to know about Zac, if you want to know about me, if you want to know the story of CCR, how it came to be, it's all there. The About Us goes over everything. I mean, from how Zac came up with CCR in the first place to how we got to where we're at today with it. And, you know, that was really exciting. And both of us contributed in writing that piece out. And it was fun. I mean, it was fun. I mean, I can only speak for myself on this, but
it was
just
fun
to think, well, and to kind of relive it almost as you're, you know, thinking of the memories. It's amazing where it's gone, you know, and how fast it's gotten there. So, so that's really cool, really neat. we have a link with episodes. And now we don't have every episode listed on there yet because it takes about 10 minutes per episode for me to format everything to get it just right. But we will have eventually every episode will be on the website as far as just you'll have a link. That's all you need is you can go to the website and find whatever episode you're after, hit your link, and it'll take you either to Spotify or to YouTube. It'll have links for both. A nice description there. So we do have the most recent. So I want to say there's at least 9 or 12, or I don't know how many I'll have on there by the time this drops. But I'll keep kind of backfilling. And then eventually I'll separate that by year to make it easier for everyone as well. But so you'll have that. You will have our Patreon information and how all that breaks down and what you get if you want to join the different levels. We have merch. We now have an outlet where you can buy CCR shirts. Right now, we have a whopping store filled with 2 shirts. 2 shirts. So 2 shirts. But we will get some more things added on there over time. However, obviously, we started with these 2. And you can go online. You can order them. We can ship them out to you. It certainly helps us, helps the show, and continues to allow us to do other things. And really, a lot of that merchandise money that comes in, we utilize that to get more merchandise. I mean, it's fun stuff. Right now it's shirts, but we, hoodies would be nice. Beanies would be nice. Coffee mugs, just things that we use. So so check that out. Stickers, you got it. Now the next 2 pieces are really important, and to me, really, these 2 were the main reasons that we went ahead and pushed to get this done as quick as we could. First, as we mentioned on a previous episode, and really every episode since then, we now have the CCR Conservation Corp, which AKA CCR Conservation Fund, has been established. That's a 501c3. It is a full-blown nonprofit, and it's time for us to now finally be able to utilize it. But in order to be able to make a difference, we got to have some money in there. Now, we've already transferred a little bit to make sure that we could get the account open and get things rolling. We've established our accounts, and there is a button, a link there where it will tell you kind of the 3-prong approach that we're taking as far as how we want to affect conservation, and what our big goals and big dreams and big wants are, and really what we're going to do. And it gives you buttons right there. They say donate, and there's several of them. And if you click, any donation you make is going to go straight into that fund. And I will end up coming kind of back on top with any donations that need a receipt. We will email you a receipt so you have one from the or from the nonprofit, so you can use that for tax purposes if need be. So please, if you want to make a difference in conservation, please go there, donate. Every little bit helps. And this is the only 2 individuals that control this fund are these 2 right here. You're looking at us. So it's
kind of weird, not to interrupt, but
no, please do.
There's a podcast. Oh my gosh. It's been a day, guys. My brain just shut down as soon as I said that. There's a podcast called, it's called Snake Talk, which is done by the Orion, the CEO of the Orion Center. And if you know conservation with colubrid snakes, they originated to conserve indigo snakes. And today, the host was interviewing the CEO of the Rattlesnake Conservancy. And I'm driving to work, listening to the guy who's the CEO of the Rattlesnake Conservancy. And I had this moment. I didn't tell Clint this. He's finding this out right now. But I'm like driving through to get to my university, you drive on back roads. And so I'm on my back roads. My brain's starting to work because it's the work, driving to work. And I thought, man, it would be really cool to have a profit for snakes. And then I literally went, oh, I've got one. Oh, yeah, I got one of those.
Hell yeah.
You know? Yeah. So, you know, we're in comparing ourselves to the Rattlesnake Conservancy, we are but we babies that have just been birthed.
Right.
You know, that I aspire to reach what they all are doing and what Orion's doing. But, you know, sky's the limit here, because if you know anything about Clint and I, we're doers, we're not talkers. So we got, I mean, we have the money from the auction that came to the university, but it's essentially the same thing. But I've been on the phone with the people in Iowa where we're going to be doing our work. I was emailing back and forth with the professor, getting ready to start that project for hognose snake conservation. So we can attest that this is a way for you to have, you know, your hands directly, indirectly in conservation. This is a dream of both of ours, because, you know, you can literally contribute right to the radio transmitter, if that makes sense, or the students' development. Because the other thing that we're doing is we're developing, you know, these are students that are working with me and they're going to go on to become conservationists. So you're helping with that process. We're going to talk about this in more detail in a minute, but we were talking a lot about, we were speaking with our Patreon subscribers and our first one, public, you know, Zoom call thing. And I didn't realize that many people live vicariously through this podcast, and you're not living vicariously, you're directly helping. So it's a pretty cool
100%.
Pretty cool element of our efforts here with CCR, and I am extremely excited and proud and everything else. It gives me the feels. That's all I'm gonna say.
100%. I mean, it gives, we enjoy doing this so much, you know, in the first place. We have so much fun, and you know, it really feels good when we hear from others on how much they enjoy the show, they enjoy the information that's given. And this seems like just such a bigger piece that now we get to be a part of. And what I love about it is, now first I want to remind everyone of one of the goals that we have is we want to eventually get to a point where we get to make land purchases with this, so that we can set up, you know, wildlife sanctuaries, basically, where we're not preserves. So because we all know that's the greatest conservation effort that you can make right there, is just saving the land. You know, without saving the land, we're going to have the animals in captivity, and that's it, you know, if we don't get better at that. So every month, as far as the money that gets taken in, there will be a set percentage that just gets held back, doesn't go, because we have to build up so that we can make those kind of moves. But I think what is kind of so beautiful with this piece here is the worlds that you, Zac, and I come from. Now that we get to collide, we actually bring the best of both worlds, where with my background, my history, and what I'm good at, I'm going to be able to help bring more money into that fund. That's what I do. That's the contacts, that's just where I'm going to be. But then what separates us from, you know, other nonprofits is you are so engrossed in the academic community. You know about these little projects all over the country and all over the world that are taking place that the rest of us would never even hear about or know are going on. And it's so exciting to know that there's certain efforts where even $1,000 injected into them, can make such a huge difference. And it doesn't always have to be. And you know, you mentioned the Rattlesnake Conservatory, and you know, I love what they do. You know, it's a big project, but it's focused. You know, it's very focused. Where with us, we get to spread to so many different, you know, areas, you know, different facets of this conservation piece, but still hone it around colubrids, you know, hone it around what we're after. So, so it is exciting to finally have this rolling and have it streamlined to where individuals that want to donate can. So please go donate. It's going to go to a very, very special cause. The other piece that makes the website so needed, Colubrid Fest.
Yeah.
We're not going to ever go an episode without talking about Colubrid Fest, are we? So
No.
what we've done on the website is, we've broke it down into 4 sections. First, how did Colubrid Fest come to be? If you were at Colubrid Fest, you heard this story. If you're a listener, you've heard this story. But for anyone that is just getting introduced, we wanted to explain how the brainchild came out. It started as a barbecue, right? That's what it was supposed to be, and just kind of how it took off, and bringing Mickey, on board, and how he came in and made big things happen. So there's so much of just the history of it. Then I felt, because I really, what we were doing was we were going back and we were thinking, what were the hiccups on what Colubrid Fest was, and it was hard to find that centralized place to have the information. And really, what is it? How does it work? When is it? All that. So you then have a section that completely explains out what Colubrid Fest is day by day. On Friday, here's what it is.
Blah, blah, blah.
And yes. And so there's no confusion, no animal sales. Saturday, here's what it is. No animal sales. And I know, sounds scary, vendors, but to all the vendors that were there, they know it works. The recipe works. Then it explains Saturday night, the auction, and what those funds, because going forward, unless otherwise stated, auction funds will be going to the CCR. Conservation Fund. So we can spread it to various organizations, which will be updated right here on the show and on the website. And so, again, complete breakdown on how that happens and then what the show is and what makes it different. Then there's a section that goes over Colubrid Fest 2024 and how that played out, us standing outside the mixer room and hearing the volume and knowing, that night was a success, and going through it, list out all the talks, the auction, the show, and then the part that we all have done our best to try to describe, and that what really made it special. And that's that feeling, that vibe. Right. And so we explain that out and, use what's, in my opinion, probably the best description anybody gave, on that. That's on the site. And then what everybody wants and everybody's after, 2025. And I'll be honest, where it's at right now, it says, this is where the information will be because as you all know, we're still fighting for that venue. I was actually just talking to Mickey about an hour before we started recording. And, we're still talking about different options, different potential areas and frustrations, all that fun stuff. So, but we do now have that centralized place where all the updates and all the information will be. So everyone can go to that. We will, as the information gets filled out, there will also be a link straight over to Show Me's website where then tickets could be purchased. Vendors can, sign up and all that, as we get the 2025 dates. And Mickey, I think what he just stated was he really, really wants to have this venue locked down before the end of the year. He wants us being able to go into 2025 with everything already mapped out and planned. So he's working diligently on it. But that's the big CCR news. There is the website is live, and there'll be more and more added to it over time. But go in, check it out. Let us know what you think. Hopefully, we will have taken care of any typo or bug before you hear this and get on it. I think we pretty much got that done. But if you find an error, tell Zac. So.
Yeah, tell me, because I don't know why he did it, but Clint gave me the login information for the website, so. I'm going to go in there. You're talking to the guy who had the information for his labs website from the school, and they built me a beautiful website. And then they said, you can change the text. And then they changed the text, and the website was never seen again. That's who you're dealing with, Clint.
Well, I think I told you.
Corrupted some file. Or line of code. They could not get it to come back up again. They literally said, this is impossible. And then that guy, I don't think I'm the reason why, but he quit the following week. So I will be very light-handed in there. But yeah.
Please do.
Okay. So that's our big announcement, and it is a very big announcement. So other than the website, the other bit that we need to discuss is that we had, like I said, our first Patreon Zoom call, or I believe it's the collaborator.
Yep, collaborator level. Yep.
Yeah. And so we had 3 people in there with us, PJ, Russ, and John. And so right now, I want to thank them for being collaborators. There were more collaborators, but those are the 3 that showed up for the first one. And it was really eye-opening. So we used the first one to just basically get feedback. Because one thing is Clint and I are, we want to give the product that you all want to consume. You know, one of the things we worry about is this part right now, the introduction, the first 45 minutes, because let's be real, a lot of people listen to podcasts and you kind of get that same formulaic beginning and you're like, I want to hear the guest, and you hit the fast forward button. And we don't want that necessarily to be happening. And we were kind of worried that it may be happening because this is a new edition in the evolution of CCR. And what we found out, at least from those 3, is that given the fact that we are actually, you know, talking about science and the market, and there's information being shared that, you know, based off our collaborators, the message we got was keep it, don't touch it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, so with that being said, if you want us to change it,
join the collaborator.
There you go.
Patreon, and get on that call and tell us. That's right. No, you know, like Zach's saying, we really want to thank those guys, because it wasn't, not only did they confirm that, you know, most of the pieces we're doing right now are solid, they gave us some great ideas on future episodes, and not just like future, but the type of episode that we can filter in. And I think it's going to be great. So, I mean, there was really some solid takeaways from that call. So it served the exact purpose we were after when creating that particular level. So thank you so much, guys. It certainly helped.
And one thing it did for me is it gave a green light to a couple ideas that were floating around in my head. Yeah, we're going to have a couple scientists on that work with snakes to talk about what that world is like, and to do the whole boots on the ground conservation. We're going to have a couple vet episodes. So Dr. Zac, if you're listening, we'll be calling soon. But anywho,
well, hell, you know, I think we just kind of go ahead and give one of the ideas I thought was just absolutely fantastic is we've been hesitant to go over a species that's not really kept. Now, we may go over some of the oddball, but even the oddballs that we've talked about on the show, there are people out there with them. But they're, you know, now we got to thinking about one of the talks at Colubrid Fest was Matt Mose talking about establishing, you know, a new species in captivity. And so we got to, you know, after hearing what those 3 told us, there's no reason for us to not have a scientist on the podcast that is studying a certain species in the field that's not kept in captivity, because then maybe if someone wants to try them in captivity, this is the best resource you're going to find, because you're not going to find it anywhere else, you know. And that's absolutely, I mean, that's going to be a great episode. So thank you again, guys. And I mean, I'm excited. I think that's going to be something neat to do.
It revitalized, because we get, not that we get stuck in a rut, and it's not a rut. It's just, you know, the feedback we get is we like it as it is. Don't fix it. So we don't want to tweak what, you know, you all like, but it was nice to get, you know, some, it was not criticism. I don't know what the hell it was.
No, it was collaboration. Is literally collaboration is what it was.
Yeah.
They came in and helped.
They lived up to their name of collaborators. So once again, 100%. Thank you. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the science and the market update, which we found from our collaborators people like, which is great. So do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I can go first. You know, first I want to give so a couple updates, because we didn't do our personal updates, but
go for it. I'm sorry. I don't really have any here. Let me do mine real quick. It takes 30 seconds. I said I wasn't getting any more snakes, and then I was sitting on the couch today, and some Stewart's milk snakes came up from Guanacaste, Costa Rica, where I'm going in 4 weeks, and from a really good guy. And I was like, yeah, those are mine now. So that's in my effort to downsize, I've been moving a lot of animals out, trying to get a little bit more focused. But this was my one splurge because I wanted that locale, because I've literally been all over that part of Costa Rica. So that whole being where you keep the animals thing, lots of sweat. That's all I have to say.
Very nice.
So that's it for me.
Well, I've got, a couple interesting things. So one, as you know, we mentioned on 2 episodes ago, we had there were 2 male black pines, here at Metazotics, donated by Zac. And, loved having them and was really looking forward, especially after talking to Michael. I'm like, I really want to do this project. And was just thrilled that a listener of the podcast, veterinarian from down south, reached out, happened to have several juvenile females. And Metazotics now has 2.3 black pines that we're getting to raise, work with, and work on that effort. So that's super exciting. And I'm going to tell you what, I am getting the pit itch.
So
bad. I just did the show in Indianapolis this past weekend, and there's a vendor that's set up caddy corner for me. This is the 3rd show in a row I've been to. I've been drooling over what he's got. And I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to go over there and I'm going to buy like 5 pairs of because he's got various morphs and I'm like, I'm going to go do it. I went over, he had 1 female left. And I'm like, okay, it's probably a sign I should probably wait till next year. Wait, you spend a lot of money. So just let's wait till next year. But man, I'm like, yeah. I was just talking to Steve about how we're going to redo the Southwest rooms with bigger caging and all that, and preparation for being able to do more pits. So that's going to happen. But so Zac and I, you know about this, the big project I've pulled the trigger on that got me so nervous.
You need to talk about that one.
And you may have to pronounce it for me. So, but I was lucky enough to kind of stumble into a group of captive bred. That was the big selling point for me. Captive bred, Pitaius. Is it Niger marginata? Am I saying it right?
Nigro.
Nigro. I was close.
You're so close.
So,
and we've been working on this, guys.
We have. It's, I'm usually the common name guy, but this one, the common name is green rat snake. And I'm like, that's not
common name ever.
Yes. But these things are glorious. And so I'm looking at potentially getting 4.4 sent in.
Yeah, he's all in, guys.
Yeah. It's, pretty penny, but I just really want to establish a nice breeding colony here in the States. And this seemed like the perfect opportunity to do that. So I'm hoping I can keep at least half of them alive. We'll see. But I do have I'm already prepping with some tricks to hopefully help make that happen. And I'll talk about one of those at least in the market update. But we've got that. We also, Metazotics has launched, and I mentioned this before, but it's own thermostats, 2 lines of thermostats, and those have started doing very well for us. They're doing well in store. In fact, they're actually now in 2 other stores are carrying our thermostats. So I'm pretty excited about that. And so just little things like that, where we're moving in the right direction. And every little bit helps, keeps us flowing. So. But I'll just move right into the market update,
Sure.
if you like. So this is the first market update of the month, which means I will go into the slides, into the data. Let me get to that. Share screen window.
We're sharing screens if you're in your car.
There we go. Okay, so sharing this. And I will, of course, talk us through it at the same time. As always, the market update is brought to you by the Show Me Marketplace. So please hop on the Show Me Reptile Show, showmesnakes.com, and support Mickey and his group. Obviously they're going to have shows all over the country. Hop on there, find out where one is close to you. They're also doing a few things with the marketplace where they are going to allow verified and unverified buyers. Interesting concept, because basically to become verified, you have to show ID. There's a process, and it's cheap. I think it's like $1, $2 for a buyer to do that. But then it helps weed out scammers. So what they're doing is they are now allowing the seller to make that decision. So you may be getting messages from a verified or an unverified buyer, and it's now the seller's call whether or not they want to pursue that transaction, or if they want to tell a seller, hey, you know what, if you want to go ahead and get verified, I think we can move forward from there. So I kind of like that they're giving the power to the people, to make the decisions on, how you want to handle that. So good stuff there. But let's move into to some numbers, into some data. So the market continues to grow. I think I'm actually on. Yeah, we'll jump to these. Sorry, got these out of order. So we have the morph market. The morph market species percentage. It's continuing to go down in terms of the overall split. As it stands right now, ball pythons are down to 70%, and they were up as high as 76 at one point. So, ball pythons are losing a little bit of market space, market share, and colubrids continue to grow. Colubrids at one point were, I think they were 11% for a very long time. Colubrids are now as high as 16%. And again, I mean, we've now passed the peak season of production. I think we've got more animals that are eating and becoming available. A lot of them are getting listed. But we're seeing that climb. 16%, I think, is the highest we've seen it. Boas are coming in at 10% of the total snakes listed on Morph Market. Other pythons at 4%. The colubrid breakdown continues to really kind of be separated into thirds. However, we've got corn snakes at 30%. Hognose are holding steady at 34%. All other colubrids are at 36%. And I will point out that it's been asked of me why I don't separate the all others category, meaning separate it into like at least king snakes, rat snakes. And it's a very good point. And I absolutely am going to do that at the first of the year. I just figure it's going to be nice to have the data stay the same all the way through 2024. I'll separate that out in 2025. So that way we can see how that shifts as 2025 plays out. We also have, as far as numbers, ball pythons, they had 1,098 more ball pythons listed from last month to today. That was a 2.6% increase, while all other pythons dropped 93. So they went down 3.7%. Boas, 1% up. That was a 60 unit count change. Colubrids, 716 increase, an 8.9% market change. Overall, the market increased as far as numbers that were listed, almost 1,900, so 3.4%. And sorry, I can't see it the way I had it just then. I apologize, guys. That's what I need. The overall change as far as colubrids, as I said, was at 8.9%, and that means corn snakes 6.4% increase, hognose 6.6% increase, all others 13.3. So 373 more listed in the all others category than a month ago. Colubrids continue to move, so that's good stuff. Here we have the overall trend on ball pythons as well as the total snakes listed. We saw where we had our lowest dip in July. Our highest point was back in January when we first started tracking, but we are getting up there. I mean, we're sitting at roughly around 58,000 right now, maybe 50, close to 58,000, and just under 60,000 was the highest, total snakes listed. So we're probably going to hit that. My assumption would be by December, we're probably going to match it, and it may stay higher or even go higher than that. We'll see. Colubrids, if you're seeing this graph, look at that bad boy. Boom! I mean, we were as low as 4,500 in July. We're almost at 9,000. So we've almost doubled where we were at the lowest point. And I mean, it's really from, I'd say right here at mid-August to today, it's just, just flying. And it's amazing because that just really tells us how many snakes are produced each year, because I know when I say I know how many, I see how many colubrids are going out the door and through the mail and whatnot from here. So I know others are certainly moving them as well.
Oh, yeah.
But for that number to keep growing, it just shows how many are being produced. It's it's pretty neat. And I'll look forward to seeing how much it dips down come next July, because that will really show us how much that market has moved, from its peak, to its next valley. So some really cool stuff there. The other pieces that are happening in the market that I think are neat. So first, the market made a liar out of me this past weekend. I'm telling you, it's an anomaly I still don't have an answer for. And that drives me crazy because I really don't even have a strong guess. So I had in my notes from this same week last year, because I have a giant spreadsheet that keeps our volume for comparable weeks. And I have notes each week on just what I thought either helped the volume get to where it was or kept it from getting any higher, just whatever. And most of it are they're micro events, meaning they're going to be things that affected Metazotics specifically, whether I was running a new special and that helped, or if there was construction outside that hurt, things like that. Or if there's something that is macro that I really feel affected just that short time frame, I'll mention that. So in my notes for this same week last year, in big capital bold letters, I told myself, don't do shows in November, which means I did terrible at shows, last November. And it makes sense because in, the reptile world, you do have a macro event that usually takes place right in October that is going to, which is going to hurt, some shows to a degree. You then have everyone settling down and not spending money because they're about to for Christmas. You're about to go into the holidays. It just seems to be a little bit of a break. You also, in certain situations, you are starting to get a little low on what you have. You may still have, a couple hundred snakes to sell, but you don't have all the good stuff. That you usually do. That stuff's already sold. So it's not unusual for November shows to kind of be a little slower. You have to get a little more creative. But I went ahead and chanced it, went ahead and risked it. And I was like, okay, we're going to go do the show. Oh my gosh. we crushed it this weekend. Really? Crushed it. Big, tip my hat to Ox. I took Ox to, this was, I don't want to say it's his first show because he was at Colubrid Fest, right? Exactly. Yep. He helped at Colubrid Fest. But it was just he and I in Indianapolis. He did a great job. And oh man, I'm glad that I asked him to go because we were hopping. That show was packed. So I don't know how all vendors did. Now, Steve tends to do almost all the shows that I do, but our tables are completely different. Steve's got bugs and, some certain cages, and I'm doing snakes and, maybe some lizards, but so completely different, but we stay neck and neck all through the show because we're texting each other, where we're at. And we think it's funny that it'll stay like that. And sure enough, that's how this one did. And it was a great show for both of us. Now I will say that I did pull out some of those dues that if you're a Patreon subscriber and you saw that CCR short, I did utilize that and it helped in a big way. And it was a spread. It was seriously a spread. I had several adults that I brought, and I usually don't have adults on my table, but I had several adult colubrids and several adult balls. And I had them priced very fair.
Oh, yeah, you did.
I saw one of you. Yeah. It's one where it's kind of a buy them at this price in the next 2 weeks, or I'm taking them off and going to just go ahead and breed them again. But I only sold one of each of those of the adults. So like one ball python adult, one colubrid adult. And I thought that was very strange, but it was about an even split through the rest. It was colubrids, ball pythons, and boas. Everything that we had on the tables just was moving. I think we sold 21 animals at, you know, this regional show, which is just kind of, wow. Okay. It was a great November show. I was talking to Mickey and I was like, I kind of wanted to know if it was a fluke, because I start analyzing it. It was like, okay, what was different? What was different? The one thing that was different in Indianapolis on Sunday were the Colts were playing the night game. So it wasn't that they had a home game or an away game, because if it was at noon, it's still dead center in the middle of that show. Yeah. But it was a night game. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that allowed more traffic to come in than normal, because they're like, well, they had, you know, the game's not starting until 7. Let's go check out the snake show. But when I talked to Mickey, he goes, no, the shows across the country did very well this weekend. He said there was one that, you know, was he would have liked to have seen gone better, but all the rest were up. So bingo. And that's where I'm like, and if anything, I would have expected them to be worse, because the election's just in a couple days, or, you know what I mean? Just tomorrow. So that's why I'm like, I don't understand.
Maybe everybody needed something to at least put themselves in a blissful state of denial of whatever's going to happen.
Yeah. I think maybe they just got tired of being scared, you know, and went for it. So that's an interesting piece. But a few other things.
I can actually add to the market update, because the Pittsburgh show, which is my monthly, I got to go get rats, that's where I'm going show. And Colin and I went up to it because that's kind of our little father-son thing we do. And one of the things I noticed at the show is, and it's your typical regional show, nothing wrong with that. But there was like way more diversity at the show than the normal. I feel like some of those vendors were kind of like you with the adults. Where it was this, I'm going into the winter season, I've got these extra animals, I don't know if I want them or not. Because I went up there to buy mice, and I had to get out of there real quick because there were a lot of pretty decent deals on tables, and that show doesn't normally, it's your classic ball python, crested gecko, leopard gecko show. And I don't know if that has anything to do with people buying, but it definitely, I almost bought stuff, and I just had to remind myself that I'm getting rid of stuff right now, you know? So I don't know if that was a contributing factor to your table, because you always have the diversity, but
it's certainly, I mean, diversity is going to help for sure, because you never know what crowd's walking in, you know? And so it's just like having stocks. Don't put it all in one stock, you know, diversify, and that's going to give you some more safety. I only got to look at one table, and it was because I knew what was on it, and and it was just catty corner, and that's where, you know, the Gophers were. So, but I do know that at this show there was at least there was an adult Taiwan beauty, you know, kind of around the corner from me, because someone had mentioned that, and then Steve came up and goes, "So that Malaysian cave dwelling rat back there, it looks different than ours." And I go, is it not as mint green? And he goes, no, then it's not Malaysian. You know, it's going to be more of the just kind of universal, you know, at this point. And, but then I'm like, who the hell's got a cave dwelling rat snake? Because I have the Asians here, you know, I mean, it's, you know, but yes, there's certainly more diversity out there, but I didn't get to walk around and look at anything, because I was it was more, the only time I got away from the table was like, Ox, I got to pee. I will be right back, I promise. You know, we run there and run back. But over, and like I said, overall good. Something else I want to mention in the market, because like I said, I want to talk about things that are going to, you know, could help the market, affect the market, things like that. There are 2 products that that I've been made aware of. One is an Exo-terra product that it's on their website right now. It's a fan that basically kind of attaches to the top of the terrarium, USB port, and helps cycle the air through. Yeah. And I just thought that was something really neat to mention, because, you know, we talk about airflow a lot on the show, and there's a lot of species that I think, I mean, subox, you know, some of these pines, some, you know, there's just so much that it's like, man, that could really help, with this. Yes, exactly.
I've had a horrible time. I've mentioned it on the show, keeping pitch ophis alive here. And then we've talked to our guests. This is where we learn. And it was all about airflow. And all of my new pits are in vivariums. Like, I'm not putting any of them in tubs.
Yeah.
Just so they have that big, but little fan. I've been thinking about computer fan. I'm a little paranoid about this, but no, that's cool.
Yeah, so I thought that was really neat. I was told about that today, and I'm like, that's one. And another one that caught my interest, Max sent it to me, and I've jumped on there, and I've already placed an order. I actually placed a bigger order than just this with them. But Reptilinks, they already have a lot of the scenting liquids.
Yeah.
They now have a frog powder.
Yeah.
And with me getting these, these Pitayas in, I'm like, I want this on hand. Yeah, I want, because I'm telling you, I'm like creating an arsenal, because it's like, some of you are going to live. I'm going to make it happen. So, I've got multiple scents coming in that, I don't already have here. But I thought I'm getting both the liquid and powder versions of the frog, because with the powder version, it's neat. You can mix it up and turn it into a liquid form, and when utilizing for the scent, or you can dust them, like kind of doing a calcium dust on crickets.
I'm getting that for falsies, because I make the infamous frog slurry, which is flipping disgusting. And if I can just put that in a little salt and pepper shaker and just dash them.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and think
so
about
much nicer than the dripping Slurpee from hell.
Yep.
So
I just think that those are some products that, I mean, especially if we want to continue to bring more and more diversity into captivity, having items like that, at the disposal are really going to help. So I wanted to mention those, on the show, because I thought they're both pretty damn neat. So I think that's what I got all in.
Cool. So I'm doing science update from our good friends at Rare Genetics Inc. Thank you all for the support. If you want to contribute to their science, where they're basically isolating the genes that make up the morphs that we know and love, and things like corn snakes and hognose snakes, please send your sheds in to Ben. If you want help with that, just message Clint and I. We both know how to do it. It's super simple. It's really easy, but there's definitely a couple things that you might mean well, but if you do them, you're going to ruin your sample. So we'll make sure you do that properly. So my update is with, I guess technically you could call it a colubroid by definition of a colubrid shaped snake. Yeah, I'm going to add this to the stage. A little something happened with our good friends, the king cobras, in between our last episode. And that little something was, we went from what we call a monotypic genus, which means a single species, Ophiophagus hanna, to four king cobra species. And what's really neat about this is when this paper hit, it hit, I think, on October 14th, 15th, 16th, somewhere in that window. It of course went all over social media immediately, and I was like, boom, that will be the next science update, because how the hell can you not like a freaking king cobra if you're a snake nerd? This is the world's largest venomous snake. They get to 18 feet in length. Ophiophagus, ophio means snake, phagus means to eat. So it's literally in the genus name. These are snake eaters. I hate to tell you this, Clint, but one of their favorite things to eat is Pitayas, by the way. So anyway, for a real long time, people have questioned the validity of king cobras being a single species, because as you go across their range, which ranges from literally the Indian subcontinent across southern parts of China, a lot of the Stan countries, Pakistan, countries like that have them. Then they go down into Southeast Asia. They're found throughout the Indonesian archipelago. They're found in islands off the Philippines. Like, that is a gigantic range. And zoogeographically, that's a bunch of different habitats. And that's definitely elements that could lead to this thing called allopatric speciation, which is speciation via different lands. So In 2021, a paper came out, and this is the image that was associated with that paper. I pulled this off the internet. And I distinctly remember reading this paper. And if you look at this, we have India right here. We have, Southeast Asia, Malaysia, the Indonesian portions down here, Philippines. What they did in this paper is they basically went out, they got genetic samples from a bunch of people, lots of contributors, and then they brought the genes back to a lab, and they just did a genetic analysis of all the king cobras. And what the genetic analysis showed was that there were 4 distinct populations. And in this nice little poster of the work that they did, you can see where these different kind of clades, we've used that word before, popped out. And it's a fairly standard practice in modern day taxonomy to have one paper deal with all the genetics, because that's a giant beast. But once you get that through peer review and it kind of gets out into the ether and people read it and digest it and mentally assimilate it, you can pretty much determine how the field's going to respond. And there was a lot of excitement about this. And if you look at what the slide says, it says king or royal family. And in other words, they're alluding to the fact that the data is clearly demonstrating that we probably have multiple species. So I hope this works. Fast forward to what hit last week. And this is the paper that's actually taken those clades, that genetic data, and then going through the taxonomic process of species description, which in and unto itself is a process that is, daunting. You've got to show how the animals are different, possibly geographically, meristically, which means using measurements, anatomically, all of the above. And it's hard to cram all that into a genetics paper. And so what they did is they basically cite the genetics paper, say that's our evidence genetically. We're going to do a complete taxonomic revision here. And the result is taxonomic revision of the king cobra, Ophiophagus hanna, species complex with a description of 2 new species. And so the author list here is huge. There's a lot of really respected names. Those of you who pay attention to the science update, we did that little science update a couple months ago, or maybe I think it was in August, where we talked about how they described the new species of anaconda, and then they came out with a paper that said how not to describe a species, if you remember that.
Little catty.
One of the authors on that was this guy named Wolfgang Wüster, and you can see he's right here as the last author. I'm assuming they intended to do this, but they may not have. But today in scientific publishing, oftentimes when you have the last author, we call that the anchor author. So if you look at a lot of my papers with crayfish, not snakes, you'll see that there's all these authors in front of me and I'm the last author. And a lot of people don't understand the point of the anchor author. The anchor author is basically saying, this was my lab, or I served as kind of the academic captain. A lot of time the scientist, the grad student, or the young person who's doing the work is the first author. And then you have, the anchor author in there. The person that did the genetic analysis in 2021 is this guy, and Rhiannon Williams. So if you look up Williams et al. 2021, you'll get the genetic piece. And this paper's great because all you got to do to find it is go online, type in Ophiophagus hanna revision, and they pay the open access fee. Thank you, all you authors that did that, because it's not cheap. Now, this could be a journal where there isn't open access fee, and I could be like talking out my butt. But I know for the rattlesnake paper that my student worked on, I paid the open access fee. And for everybody to have access to it, I think that cost us just under $3,000. So you've got to pay. It's like one of the, I'm not going to get started on this. I'm going to stop. We don't need this on YouTube. But, information should be free. That's all I'm going to say. So
Preach.
Yep. You move on. I took the abstract here because what's really cool about this is here we have Ophiophagus hanna. That's what everybody knows. And you see this S.str if you're looking on YouTube. If not, it says S.str. That means sensu stricto, which is a way of basically saying we're taking this species concept and we're reducing down the name that already existed to define to this place. So they say we respect the concept of Ophiophagus hanna. to populations from eastern Pakistan, northern and eastern India, the Andaman Islands, Indo-Burma, and Indochina, south to central Thailand. So there's that. Another one of these species that got named, we've talked about this on the show before. If you publish a name and somebody rolls in and you get rid of that name, and then somebody rolls in and shows, no, those are actually, valid taxonomically, you have to resurrect the name from a taxonomic oblivion. So one of the species, Ophiophagus bungaris, was that. It says Schlegel 1837 behind there. That lets us know Schlegel in 1837 described a species with this, I don't think it was an Ophiophagus at the time, but it was bungaris. It was one of the king cobras. So that species is now resurrected from the taxonomic deathbed. And then we've got the two new species, which basically means these are the ones that for the first time are recognized taxonomically. Ophiophagus kalinga, which comes from the Western Ghats of southwestern India. And this is cool because anybody that follows king cobra science, and I know we got some people that do because this is the most iconic, one of the most iconic snakes on earth, knows of a guy named Ram Whitaker, who is basically, he's dedicated a lot of his life to studying these animals. He's studied these animals in captivity. He's studied these animals in the wild. And this is actually the species of king cobra now that we know the most about scientifically. And it ends up being brand new to science when we do the taxonomy. So, that's the deal with that. And then we have what is the most range-restricted member of the group, Ophiophagus salvatana, which comes from a single island of Luzon in the northern Philippines. So what's really cool about this paper is all of you that are sitting there thinking, oh, God, they split another species. Here we go. Calm down. Because this paper is a beast. And Wolfgang Wooster is not on Team Split, just so you all know, Dr. Wooster. He's got to have a lot of evidence. I want to remind you that this is the guy that sunk the new anaconda. Okay? So these are all valid taxa. These are going to stand the test of time. And what's really interesting is, resultant of this, we have quite a few potential additional taxa. They just had enough evidence here. So when you go through the paper, they've got these really cool plates. But this is, this is what will forever be the king cobra, Ophiophagus hanna. And then here's one of the new ones, Ophiophagus kalinga. So if you're interested in this, you can find this on your own. But it's a great read. I suggest skipping to the discussion and looking at the pretty pictures. If you want and I'm not being insulting here, Mr. Taxonomy, skipped to the discussion and looked at all the pretty little pictures, just so you know, because snake taxonomy is great, but we talked about this. You're going to learn a lot about an Ophiophagus hemipene if you really feel the need to have that knowledge in your gray matter of your brain. And then they do a lot of what's called scutellation research, which is where you're talking about scales and shapes, and it's riveting to a certain extent. But they also do in this paper, which is really interesting. I love this stuff. Just this really nice history of king cobras scientifically. So like who found the first one, what the different names were. They have a bunch of figures from the 1800s of when the species was first described. So hats off to the authors. This was a fun one. We will not be ever talking about the captive care and husbandry of freaking king cobras on this show.
No.
But a lot of the snakes that they eat, we talk about. So with that being said, that's our science update. And we had a lot to talk about because our intro, we're sitting right at 58 minutes.
Yeah,
so if you made it to this point, thank you. But now we are going to quickly bring on our guest. So without further ado, here she is, brought to the stage. We have the one, the only Amy Zerkle with us tonight to talk about Garter Snakes.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good, Amy. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it is our pleasure. I need to start off by telling you that, Wendy wanted me to say hi to you right off the bat because she absolutely fell in love with you at Colubrid Fest. So.
Oh, she was charming. I can't wait to see her again.
Good deal. All right. Well, let's get right into it, Zach. You ready?
So we recently had Rob on, as we said,
yes,
and the both of you make Zerkle reptiles. So
We do.
give us your history with snakes and how you ended up getting to where we are today. And then, like I said in the kind of before we came on, if you could also kind of lead into garter snakes, that'd be great.
Well, I wasn't allowed to have a snake as a kid. We could have any pet we wanted, excluding snakes. So, you put something out there that somebody can't have, and that's what you want.
Yeah.
And so, I know we went to the Everglades, and my brother used to catch all kinds of stuff. He would catch anoles, and we actually went to some kind of an exhibit there, and I don't remember whose exhibit it was. I was really little, but they had indigos, and I guess part of the show was you could hold this indigo. And so the guy brought it at me up there and put it around me and my brother, and my mom almost fainted. She just couldn't handle it. So speed forward a couple of years, my mom was pregnant with my sister. My dad was building a cabin, and a copperhead climbed in the door, and my mom jumped in the sink. And I remember sitting on the floor, and I was really close to it, and I thought it was beautiful. And my mom was screaming, and one of the workmen actually smashed it with a shovel. And I was really disappointed that, that they killed the snake. And so my mom was then, after that, it was never, ever going to be a snake anywhere in the house. So a few years after that, I guess I was maybe 10. My brother was older than me. He was 16. He had a snake under his bed. He had a black rat snake in a wooden box with a light bulb. And my sister and I would do his chores to get to look at it or touch it or watch him feed it.
Wow.
And so he had it probably 6 months. And the housekeeper that we had found a snake skin in the garbage can. And she wasn't coming back in the house until that animal was gone, wherever it was. So my mom ferreted out the snake under the bed, which he traded for a barn owl. And so there was always something going on in our house. And so as soon as I could get out and get a job, I got a job at a pet shop, which is where I met Rob on his 13th birthday buying a parakeet. He came in to buy a bird. So I met him when he was 13. I was almost 18, and I never got rid of him. So we ended up having a store instead of a wedding. I asked my parents to buy us a pet shop. And my sister had a fancy wedding, and I got a pet store. So Rob and I ended up having the store and accidentally bred boas. We were fish people and accidentally bred boas in the store. And then one day Rob was sick, and I went to open the store by myself. And I went out the back with a garbage can, one of those big, giant Rubbermaid 50-gallon garbage cans. And it was spring. And thousands of garter snakes were rolling down the hill behind our pet store. There was a den. There was this big culvert, and they were denning around the culvert. And there were thousands of them. They were in big balls, like beach balls, rolling down this hill. And I rolled a big ball in this garbage can. And I called Rob, and I go, I don't care how sick you are. You have to come and see this. It's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. And I had never seen a migration like that. And it was really fascinating. And by the time he got there, it took him about 45 minutes. Most of them had dissipated. But I literally had a 50-gallon garbage can full of garter snakes just to show him, because nobody would ever believe me. And when you opened the back door, then you could see where they were dispersing. But it was the most interesting thing I'd ever seen. And you're talking Lexus like 88 maybe. And people didn't keep garter snakes for pets. So I ended up getting some albino checkered garters, were the first ones that I had. And I really thought they were fun. And people made fun of me for keeping them because they just called them junk snakes and they weren't interesting. But they're really inquisitive, and they're intelligent. They're interactive. They like to watch what you're doing. My son, who's not a snake person, even though he grew up with two parents that are, he's
how's that happen? I mean,
I don't know. He's a 350-pound weightlifter, and he's terrified of snakes. So he's in the snake room one day, and he goes, "Oh my God, there's hundreds of snakes watching you." Well, they were watching me cut up fish and pinkies, and so they're all periscoping up, watching, and he's just totally freaked out because they're so interactive. I think that's one of the reasons I find them really endearing. And the fact that they're live bearers is fun. It's kind of like Christmas. You come in and there's a whole bunch of babies. So that makes it really interesting. And they come in such amazing colors. They're just, it's wild when you look in there at all, California red-sided garters, the Oregon red spots, all the different colors, the chapalas that are blue. There are so many different ones, and they're so variable. Sorry, I have a cat trying to walk on the computer. So So it makes it really fun, and I had originally kept them in tubs, and I recently started keeping them in vivariums with UVB just to try that out. And
Mhm.
I'm really happy with the way that's going. So I'll have to report back later about that. But that really got me interested in the garters. And the thing with the garters is that I can't keep as many as I'd like. They are really labor intensive,
Yeah.
um, a
Mhm.
lot of feeding. And the nice thing about it is that if I have a mom that comes to the show and she doesn't want to feed mice, you can feed fish from the grocery store. You can feed chicken hearts. You can feed chicken liver. And there's a whole bunch of things that they'll eat in addition to rodents. So they don't have to be just on a rodent diet,
Mhm.
which for a lot of people, that's a deal breaker. They don't want to feed rodents
Yeah.
or they have rodent allergies.
Right. So before I ask, a question, I want to point out, I love that you just said that you're trying them with UVB
Hmm.
because, you're an individual who has been doing this for years and years, and it goes to show that we need to constantly be learning and trying to expand, and
Oh, sure.
trying to get
Always.
better at how we keep them. So I
Oh,
love that you just said that,
oh yeah.
because,
Well,
it's
that's one of the things that I really enjoy looking at them, and having them
Yep.
in tubs, I couldn't really enjoy them. So I really like the European method. I like looking at Zach's animals that he has there in his office because
Mhm.
you get so much more enjoyment out of it. And if I have to keep less, then I'll do that to give them the space to be able to look at them. And if you watch garters outside, they do bask, and so I know
Mhm.
they enjoy that. And so we started changing things around this year and putting them into cages with those lights to see how they would do. And I've got another female granite ready to drop babies, so that'll be twice this year that she's gone. So that's kind of
Nice.
interesting, and I have to correlate that to the lighting, I believe.
Well, and that's it. As I mean, when we talk about keeping them in better ways, and then at the same time when we talk about the fact that we're breeders and we like to have a certain number to make it worthwhile, but I think that if we continue to move in this direction where we're giving them more of what they need and what they would get
Hmm.
in nature, then we may still have the same production with fewer animals.
Right.
Y-
I
You
think
know,
that's true. I think
yeah.
that's true.
So
I can see that.
kudos. So what garters do you keep now? What are you
So
working
I
with?
have albino checkers. I have granite checkers, albino granites. I have chapalas. I have Cali red sides. I have Oregon red spots. I have Western black necks. I think that's everybody at this point.
Nice. So all in, how many garters would you say you keep as far as like your breeders? Just curious.
Probably 35, 40. I don't
Okay.
know. I have tanks of females and tanks of males, so
Uh-huh.
I don't really have a head count. People
Just,
ask me
just
how many
curious.
snakes I have. It's 3 rooms full,
Oh,
so
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a story I tell where, and I think Rob had commented on the same post. This was years ago, because we chuckled about it, but someone had asked, how many snakes do you have? On a Facebook post. And I never counted, but I happened to be in the snake room when that was,
Oh, and you counted?
posted. And I thought, what the hell? And so I went
Don't.
through and I counted out and I replied 299 because 300 would just be ridiculous. Far
Yes, I
surpass that
do.
now, but yeah, that
Mhm.
was, I remember
I
that. So I
I
remember Rob
understand
laughing
that.
at me.
Well, people always go,
Yeah.
"How many do you have?" And you really don't know.
No.
You just go in there and service it. You don't think about it.
Well,
Right.
and with garters, you can have 35, and then mom drops a litter of 35,
Hmm.
and you just
Yeah.
doubled what you had. Like,
Well, that was one of the problems I had a few years ago. I probably had 400 or 500 baby garters, and
Oh.
Rob got really
oh,
annoyed because every day I was downstairs after dinner for 2 or 3 hours because today it was to feed, and then tomorrow it was clean and water, and then the next day it was feed, and the next day,
Mhm.
and he's like, I'd really like to see you, and I'm, yeah, I'm sorry, but I have to do, you have to keep up on these guys because they don't wait. They're so small and they're so frail when they're little. And once they get some size, they're pretty durable, but the little guys have to be fed really often and monitored. And and so he really asked me to cut down on the amount that I had because it was really kind of overwhelming
Yeah.
just
Do
to have
you
that many.
do you try to like stagger your breeding or pairing at all? because of that, to try to not have it all at once?
Well, the problem with garters are they do what they want to do, so they can retain
That's
sperm.
true.
So even if you
Yeah,
hold them
fair.
back, they just do it when they're ready. And I didn't anticipate this granite, and I went to get today. I was moving snakes, and she didn't eat, and that's always a bad sign for me. Are you shedding, or why aren't you eating? And I looked under. There was newspaper at the bottom and aspen on top, and she had burrowed under there, and she's just really plump. And I was like, oh, so. Apparently, we're going to have more babies, and then I'll have to work really hard to get her plumped up because she's going to go into hibernation. Of
Right.
course, it ever gets cold up here because today we're going to be like 80 tomorrow in the middle of November, first of November. So we had the problem last year with the same thing being so warm. So I guess I'll have time to put weight back on her. But I was not anticipating another litter of granites.
Well, so you mentioned that you do the UVB and the light, but can we talk a little bit about the actual aquarium? Like, are you using old school aquariums?
I've got 40-gallon Exo-terras. Yeah, I've got Exo-terras for the females, 40 gallons for them. And then the males are in 30-inch ones. I've got a group of males in the 30-inch size, and the females are in the 40s. So
yeah,
I really like them. And they're easy. You don't have to lift the lids off. You just...
Yeah. We actually were just talking about moving a lot of our rosy boas into some Exo front openers. That way we could, same thing, we wanted more airflow and everything than, what we're dealing with in tubs. And
that's
having front access. Yeah, it makes a big difference having that front access, It's,
Well, garters are a little fast, so I give them a lot of places to hide so they don't come shooting out. Otherwise, it's kind of like catching lightning. But most of the time, they're pretty well behaved if they have a lot of places to hide. So they have cork in there, and they've got little plastic hides, and they seem really happy with it.
Oh, cool. What substrate do you use?
Aspen bedding. Majority of them are aspen bedding. And when I have gravid females, I usually put them on newspaper just so it's easy to find the babies.
Zac Loughman.
Mine live in a bioactive in my living room.
Yeah, I know you said that.
Yeah, and
that was fun.
When they gave birth, it was like herping in the living room for about 2 months. I thought I got them all, and I'm sitting on my couch.
There you see one.
Yeah, and I look over, and sure enough, just on the basking rock is a. And I actually felt bad for the thing because I was like,
"What are you eating?
What the hell have you been eating?" Like
isopods.
But I remembered I threw a bunch of little red wiggler, and that had to have been what it was eating.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So okay. So we got Exos for heating. Are you using? I take it basking lights, or do you have under tank heating, or what's the?
Well, they have an under tank heat pad in one corner that stays on, and then they have a basking light that comes on during the day.
Okay, very cool.
And they really enjoy that, especially the gravid females. You'll see them just up there laying out.
Well, that is like I said, there's one group of snakes in my collection that made it to the main room of the house. The bearded dragon and the blue tongue skink live there because those are my son's animals, and my wife lives to serve my son. So, so those are there because of Colin. And the one snake that I was like, okay, we're gonna try. And Oregon red spots are beautiful snakes too.
They are. Yeah. They're gorgeous.
But they're in a 40-gallon breeder, and I have 2 females that came from you, and 2 males that came from you. And what's great about those snakes is that me being the nerd that I am, and I like to see the the behaviors and stuff. These guys are great because when the basking lights come on, everybody kind of gets up there and basks in a pile.
Yep.
And then I was able to tell, just like what you were saying, I was able to determine I got 2 gravid females here because as they get deeper and deeper and deeper into their gravidity, they don't leave. Like they are just under that light the entire time. They only leave to eat.
That's it.
And then they go away. And like I said, I was expecting a pre-litter shed, and they don't do that.
No, not always. So it makes it interesting.
So they just left,
yep.
And then babies showed up, and that was how that went down. So, but that was all done in my living room because I didn't intend on breeding them. I didn't cycle them. I didn't put them in the garage. They got the light cycle from outside because there's a sliding glass door that is probably 2 feet away from those snakes.
Oh, sure. Sure.
But they got some temperature, but they didn't go, deep. And here we go. We ended up with babies. I moved. All the babies went to David Deem, who we had on, who did the milk snake episode because his wife wanted babies. And I was raising them and having a hard time with my schedule, feeding them, like you were saying.
Oh,
and I was
sure.
like, I don't want these guys to.
Right.
So I have some milk snakes coming my way, and he got the Oregon red spots.
Nice.
And I know that he's completely become enamored with them.
Oh, they are. They're charming.
Yeah. So with the different, well, let's talk a little bit about feeding, because you've given a little bit of indication that this isn't I feed, on Sunday at 2 every day or every week.
Right.
What's the deal with feeding in your opinion?
Well, with the babies, it's every other day. I feed babies every other day. And then when they get up to where they're, probably the size of a coffee stirrer from McDonald's, they get a little bit bigger, then they can go to every 3rd day. And the adults, I try to feed them every 5 to 6 days. And they eat a combination of catfish and tilapia. They also get chicken hearts and chicken livers and pinkies. I just try to give them a variety. So in case it's bad weather and I don't get a pinky shipment, or I don't get, I buy the fish from Restaurant Depot. I think it's a 50-pound box of catfish nuggets. And so I usually have quite a few of those in the freezer. But yeah, they get a variety. And then I typically try to include some. Dr. Ford had told me that he used to feed minnows, and he would also catch frog tadpoles for baby checkers back in when he was at the university. But you have to freeze them for 2 weeks to kill the parasites. So a lot of times I'll get minnows and just have some minnows, so they get whole prey. They get all the internal organs and the bone. Yep. It's really good for the females, especially when I want to breed them. So I try to vary their diet as much as possible.
So you talked about, you've got aspen, is what you're using for bedding for the adults. What's the rest of the setup look like as far as, the lighting, the temperatures, just that kind of thing?
Well, I try to get them a hot spot of 82 during the day, 82 to 85 for the females. And then they have a heat pad on the bottom, which is probably about 78 to 80 degrees. I have a bunch of cork bark stacked up in there so they can get as close to the light as they want. And they can also get away from it. So the heat's all on one end. The UV light is over a basking area that they can get up under. And then water and cooler hides are on the other side. So left hand is going to be the hot side and the right hand is going to be the cooler side. They're by a window. So this time of year, all the lights go off at night, and the heat pad is pretty small. It's only like the smallest one. What's it, like 3x5, just really little. Yeah. It's not very big. I'm not looking for them to stay warm at night. And a lot of times they don't seek it out, to be honest with you. Like Zac said, as soon as the lights come on, they're right up there under it. And then, at night they're on the cool side in the hide altogether.
Do you do like a moist hide or anything for a humid hide?
Not unless I notice their shedding is patchy. I don't really do that with the garters. All the Asian stuff does have moist hides, but not with the garters. I don't. They're really prone to blistering, especially if there's not a lot of air circulation. So I'm always really reticent to offer them anything really wet like that, because they can end up with a lot of skin problems.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense. You mentioned earlier you had like your male tank and your female tank. Can you kind of talk to the audience about why you've set it up like that?
That's what Rob wants, because I like to keep them together. You just
did not expect that to be the answer.
Well, I like keeping them together, like Zac, and I just figured they'll do what they want to do. And Rob thinks that the females need a break. So I just split them up to make him happy. And when you've been married 40 years, you just do things to not argue, because it's just easier than fighting about it. I mean, I'm going to put them together when I hibernate them anyway. So whatever.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
It's true.
I will say, I see a lot of mating at the end of August through September. And then we get into October and that goes away. And I am fairly certain one of my females was impregnated with the late summer mating. She dropped a full month and a half before the other one did, and it was in like end of May time.
Well, I think a lot of animals actually breed in hibernation. So I don't think it's unreasonable to think that, you know, they would do it. If they're opportunistic, I believe, and they have the opportunity, they'll use it. Sorry, my cat turned the Roomba on, so let me turn this off. Sorry.
Nice.
Apologize.
Oh, no worries.
All good.
Trying to catch it with my foot, but it was too far away.
You talked about the different items that you were using to feed, you know, the babies and the adults as well. Do you find that any of the babies give issues with feeding, or are they pretty voracious and just it's how often you got to feed them is the problem?
Well, the Cali red sides always have babies around the 4th of July for me, and that's a terrible time to get live fish because in the hot of summer, baby guppies come in just really awful. The feeder guppies are always really fungused and in really bad shape. So if at all possible, you know, you need to try to get your feeders set up ahead of time and have a guppy tank. If you know somebody that breeds fish, they can eat baby convict cichlids or anything like that. Most of them want some kind of movement. The only caveat to that is if you have an older garter that's a little bit older, they're kind of like puppies. If they see somebody doing something, they'll do it too. So I just had this litter of albino babies about a month ago. I had another albino checker that dropped babies, and they're in with babies that are like 2 months older. And because the older babies eat frozen fish, they just took to that right away. They didn't have to have the live. But some of them are really problematic in the fact that they want something moving. And you have to make sure that you have that option.
So, you know, what you just said to me goes to show again how often we've said that garters seem to be just one of the most intelligent snake species out there.
They are.
I mean, because that right there, the baby's learning quickly just by watching, you know, what the little older ones are doing. They're such a neat species. I mean,
they are.
Social behaviors.
They're very social.
Yeah. I mean, the studies that have been done on them just continue to impress me. I know why I've not kept them, and it's because of how much work, you know, that they can be as babies.
Well, the big ones aren't so bad, but the babies can definitely be a lot of work, especially like Zac said, you know, some of like I used to have Kansas red sides, and they can have 50 babies at a time. So, you know, you're talking a huge volume of babies that you have to feed, and you have to monitor because garters are really bad about fighting for food. So I cut all the food up about the size of their heads. So it's a lot of mincing up fish with herb scissors, you know, those ones that have like 5 blades on a pair. I use that to cut up fish for the babies, and it works really well. But you also have to sit there and watch because if there's a piece that's a little bit too big, somebody will try to eat his friend, and then you end up. So I'm always listening for tail slapping when I'm in for their feeding garters. And when you hear the tail slapping, you know that they've both got a hold of a piece of fish. Yeah. And you have to break it up. So it's not something you can feed and walk away.
You can't do that. You can't do that with the adults either. I did that stupidly. And I heard the infamous tail slapping from a floor and a half away. And I was like, what is that sound? And then it hit me. Oh, God. Oh, God. And then I ran down, you know, because the snakes are the bottom level of my house. And my one female had eaten a third of the male. Like he was in there. And I picked them up.
Can eat the whole thing, which is crazy.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. So now after that, I mean, I wouldn't like leave the room, but I would do other things in the room. Now when I feed them, I am dead set watching them because
I have all the garters in one side of the baby room, and so when I'm feeding garters, I'm on that side of the room and I can monitor. But I also cut the fish up to about the size of their heads. Even the bigger ones, you know, they all get little pieces of fish that are like this big. And Rob goes, that's really small. And I go, yeah, but they can snap it up in 2 bites and the other ones don't get a chance to get a hold of it. So for me, it saves a lot of energy and work of having to fight them apart because there's not enough there for them to chase each other.
That makes sense. Do you find that there's a certain species that tends to want the moving prey more than others? Just, I guess, any differences in nuance in, you know, what you see in the behaviors or keeping or anything like that between the different?
The baby California red-sided seem to be a lot more keyed on doing the live fish. I think when you find the checkers are probably the easiest to get over on something frozen, but I think with the Cali red sides are the ones that are really want to eat something live. And I've heard that the Eastern blacknecks are like that, which is one of the reasons I don't keep them, because they're really keyed on something moving.
Gotcha. What other options are there besides the guppies? I just want to ask these questions for anybody who's looking to.
Well,
to
Dr. Ford used to collect tadpoles. I don't have that option, but he
yeah.
used to collect tadpoles, and he would freeze them, and then he would offer them those. I guess they would just jiggle the tray that they were in, and they would eat those. So I had a friend that told me that he would freeze guppies, and that he used a piece of spaghetti noodle to wiggle a frozen guppy that had been thawed out. But I mean, I just don't have time to do that. I mean, I hate to sound terrible, but I just don't have that kind of time. So you got to get with the program.
And it's typically, if I remember from a previous episode, I know that like worms are cracked to garters, but is that something that's avoided a lot? Or?
Well, the problem with worms are that all worms contain nematodes, even organic worms. And so if you feed worms, you have to worm the snakes. And I just assume not have to go through that. So I don't. A lot of people do feed worms, and I thought if you got organic worms that they would be okay, but apparently not. They all had nematodes, so I just don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah,
to be honest with you, especially in a baby garter. I mean, trying to weigh that and get it in some kind of parasite riding stuff in there would be fun. Not interested.
Well, anything else with the husbandry? I mean,
keeping things clean. You know, garters poop a lot, so you really have to. With the babies, I keep them on paper towel. A lot of times with those tiny pieces of fish, they can get those aspen pieces in their mouth. So during breeding, a lot of times, and when I have gravid females, I'll put them on paper towel just so you don't have any issues with that. And babies are the same way. I keep them on paper towel. I hear a lot of people that keep them just on bare bottom, but then it makes it hard for them to crawl.
Yeah,
because they can't move across there. I've had a lot of breeders tell me they just keep them in a bare Rubbermaid type tub, but I like to give them something. And then so when I go to change the water on the day after feeding, everybody gets moved out, the whole cage is cleaned, disinfected, and then they're put back in with clean paper towel, and that continues until they're probably maybe not quite as big as a pen, and then they can move on to bedding. By that time, they're pretty well established.
Let's talk about that, because one of the things that I love about garters and Nerodi as well, but definitely garters, is that when you get these little guys dialed in, we're talking about the babies and they're eating and everything's going well. They go from this ridiculously small baby snake to like what you would think would be a year-old snake in like 7 months. Like they hit that crazy growth spurt. And that's something I've not experienced that with all the king snake holdbacks and everything like that. I was just messing with the rack in this room where I have my 2023 holdbacks and realized, man, you guys are getting big. But we're at what? 16 months for those guys. And you can get a garter to like 10, 15 inches. And if it's really eating and everything's dialed in, that's like 8 months after it's born. It's like crazy how fast they grow.
Yeah, it's really interesting that they can put on size fast, and but not all of them are like that. There are some that are slow starters, and so it's you have to keep separating them out and take the ones that are growing faster away. So I usually try to keep 4 or 5 in a container together, just because I find that group keeping just seems to stimulate their appetite. They remind me of puppies, and so if one's eating, they all have to go over and do it. But you do have to keep splitting them out and putting the bigger ones away, because they cannot eat their little siblings, as you know. But yeah, they can grow fast. It's amazing, and I see people, I'll take them to the show and I've got them up to the size of a corn snake, and people are like, oh man, that's tiny, and I go, oh, that's pretty big now. It was like 3 inches when it was born. 10 times bigger than it was when it was born. But they just see a teeny tiny snake, and to me it looks pretty big.
That's amazing.
Cool.
That's amazing.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, is there a species that tends to be your favorite at this point out of them?
They're all so colorful. I have a hard time. I like the Oregon red spots are one of my favorites because the colors of them are just beautiful. So it's interesting that these guys have a blue dorsal stripe, a yellow, or white. And it's probably locality specific. But, back in the day when they were first collecting these and they were all wild caught, nobody kept those records, to be real honest with you. And now you can't get them out of the wild. So, I haven't been to Oregon to actually check that out, but I have some that have a blue dorsal and a blue belly, and then others have this yellow, and then I have some that have white. So it's really very interesting.
It's, for those who aren't watching this on YouTube, have a picture of one of Amy's Oregon red spotted garters right now up on it, and it really is hard to believe that garters aren't kept more often. I mean, this is a beautiful animal.
I don't think people see them that much. They aren't real mainstream. There are garter niches, and there are people that have them. But by and large, there are just not a lot of them out in the public. And then when you have adults, you don't want to sell your breeders, but the babies don't look like that. The babies are, of course, much smaller, and people are really intimidated by them. But I think if they would try them, they would really enjoy them. And everybody thinks garters are musky and they're going to poop on you, but they don't. They're really, really docile. I have to say the Cali red sides are probably the most hyperactive. And I tell everybody they're the supermodels of garter snakes, that they're beautiful. So you put up with it. But, as far as docile and calm and easygoing, the Oregon red spots just have it all over them.
Now it's the San Francisco red-sided, the ones that are the endangered?
Yeah,
like
they're protected federally, but people in Europe have them. They do. They have them all over Europe, and so they're not endangered in captivity. They're just endangered in their native locality.
Gotcha. What's the? And forgive me, I know I'm kind of just throwing this out, hoping that one or both of you will know the answer to this. So, does it work like the same permitting system that we were discussing with like the indigos?
You can't have them at all.
You can't, not at all.
I don't think there were any established here before they were listed.
Right.
So if you don't have them established before they're listing, then you can't get them.
That's my understanding. Because I tried to get some over from Europe, and I couldn't do that either because they have them established. All the guys over there have them, but we can't have them here.
Interesting. Gotcha. Okay. Well, we've got a picture now of a California red-sided garter up. We did.
See, she has the yellow stripe.
And beautiful blue and red. Do
you mind? Because I know there's a difference. And the difference with a lot of people see the Cali red sides, and I personally, I like the Oregon red spots more. But I know a lot of people really see that neon blue and the red and the black, and so looks are one thing. But do you mind explaining any differences you see in behavior between the Cali red sides versus the Oregon red spots?
Well, I think the California red-sided garters are much more high-strung, and they tend to be really fast and a little more spasmodic as far as handling goes. If you want a terrarium animal, I think they're fantastic. But as far as a handleability, I don't think that they have it at all in the way that the Oregons do. Oregons are really docile. They'll sit in your hand. They don't musk. They don't bite. The Californians do. They'll musk, and they're bad about pooping on you. It's just they're just a different animal, and that's just their defensive mechanism. And I don't see that they really calm down. Now, some people have told me they have really nice ones. I've not met one. So, the ones I have, I keep them in the cage and I enjoy them, but I'm not playing with them. The Oregons I can take out and hand to my grandkids, or I can take them to a show and I can hand them to somebody, especially like I'll have some that are yearling size, and they'll sit right in your hand. They don't try to get away. They don't try to muss. They're just happy to be there and just excited to see what's going on. So I think they make absolutely perfect pets. And the same with, see, there's a baby, and the same with the checkered garters. I think they have very similar personality really easygoing, make great pets. Of course, the males are great because they stay tiny. They only get 14 to 16 inches. And the girls are going to get over 2 feet. So if you don't want a really big snake and you want something tiny that you could keep in a small vivarium, I mean, a male garter is a perfect pet.
Excellent. Now,
So
what do we
that's
have right
probably,
here?
that's a baby Oregon red spot. That's one of the yellow striped ones.
That thing, it glows. I mean,
He's
wow.
beautiful. Yep, I
Wow.
still have him.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I love them.
Wow.
Yeah, they have a so a lot of times the babies don't start to show their color until they get a little size, but yeah, they're really beautiful, and I just don't think you can say enough nice things about them.
No, I mean, for those who can't see this, the head on this thing is like a blood red.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, meaning as far as coloration, like a deep, dark blood red. It's got a stripe on it that I wouldn't call it a highlighter. It's more of a honestly, it's about the same yellow you see in a lot of beauty snakes.
It is.
It's kind of that shade. And then the spots on the side, you're looking at a brilliant orangish red. And I mean, just spotted all the way down both sides. And I mean, this is just a gorgeous animal.
Yeah, Rob does really good pictures because it's really hard to get him to sit still. That's in Rob's hand.
It takes
he had his hand. He had his hand closed around it first, and then he opened his hand real fast and took the picture.
Yep, it takes a colubrid person to understand how to get decent pictures of colubrids. Trust me, I get it. And you've got about 3 seconds, maybe 5.
If you're lucky.
Yes. So get the picture fast.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, very nice one there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, those are newborns, so they don't have much color yet. Those are just brand new from mom. But they have all the ear markings that they will have by their bright red faces.
Yeah. And it's, again, you can see in this picture, we've got, it looks like 5 babies here. You can see the heads on all 5. And to me, they already have that attentive look to them.
Do. Oh, yeah. They're watching.
Yeah, there's certain snakes that you can just tell are paying attention, and they are certainly doing this here.
Well, they watch. If you look at their bellies, you can see the blue on the belly is already starting to come in there. So those are just a couple hours old in that picture. They were still in their baby ball. When they're first born, a lot of times they'll wad up like that, like baby fish.
I guess it offers some protection in the wild. Makes them look a little bigger.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I have some. This doesn't really have to deal with husbandry. It just has. It's more the mentality of people. So one of the things that I found really interesting is when I had my little litter of red-sideds drop, and I was wrangling them out of the the vivarium. I had them all. I had 3 of them, I think, in my hand. I walked outside because that sliding glass door is right there, and they were just kind of dangling. And I grabbed my phone, I took that real quick picture, and I threw it up on Instagram and just said, I've got 3 garter snakes, la-di-da, right? And I put up pictures of false water cobras, barons, racers, mad cats, mad hogs, hognose snakes, snakes in the wild, all this stuff. I have never received as many immediate messages as I did for those 3 little garter snakes. And it was just boom, 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 boom. And so it seems like there was there's actually interest in garters. Do you see that being a garter breeder, or do you have a hard time moving the garters, or have they gone from not being, that?
In the last 10 years,
they've
started,
what do you see with that?
Well, I think in the last 10 years, they've become more mainstream. It used to be that the only garters anybody knew were albino checkers. And so now there are other garters that, are kind of coming into prominence. And I think that it's having them at shows. But, the problem is that there is such a huge volume of ball pythons that people just don't get past that a lot of times. And so you really have to show them to people. And I get people all the time that come to me at shows and say, oh, I really wanted a snake, but I can't feed mice. Okay, well, you don't have to. And then, you show them a garter and they're really intrigued. But a lot of it's just knowing how to pair the right person with the right animal. And I've said this before, that I've probably unsold more animals than I've ever sold, but I've never sold an animal I didn't feel good about who it went to.
Nice.
And I mean, and there's a lot to say about that because, Rob has a job and he works every day. So when we sell animals, it's because we want to do it. It's not because I have to do it. And so I'd rather take that animal and put it in a place where I know it's going to do well rather than just make a quick sale. So it's that way with garters a lot of times. You get some people, especially little kids, that want a baby garter, and it has to be the right little kid, a little kid that really wants to take care of it, not just, going to stick it somewhere or squeeze it to death. I mean, kind of like tiny baby corn snake. You have to make sure it gets the right home.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I'm surprised that there's not a bigger market for garters online, and for a very specific reason. Because we talk about how gorgeous they are. That's easy. You see that. But with knowing human behavior, I would see that more people would become hesitant purchasing them at a show because of what you mentioned earlier, the size. They see this and they'd be intimidated by the size of it. But online, you can't always tell that. The pictures we were just looking at, if you take, the hand out of the picture and like the picture of those newborn babies, they look like 11-inch snakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they're not.
No, not at all.
4.5.
Yeah, not even close. It's all about the angle, So
right, exactly.
So I think that because and I think I've mentioned this story before too. The first time I got pale milk snakes from Cole Grover, I didn't realize how little those things were until they showed up, and I'm like,
holy moly!
Oh my gosh! It was the first one that was ever sent in a condiment cup. What I mean, instead of a deli cup, and I'm like, oh my god! But I can, I would see that. Being that people wouldn't realize how small they were, not that it was being hidden, but, pictures, sometimes you don't catch that if there's not a size reference, in the picture. I would expect there to be a bigger online market, if not by mistake. If nothing
one
else.
of the things, Rob doesn't like to sell them when they're little like that, just because it's really hard. They get dehydrated easy. If you try to keep them on damp moss, then you end up with a blister problem. So usually we hold them until they're 6 months old or so before I let them go, just because that way I know I'm putting something in somebody's hand that they're going to be able to take care of. No different than we do with mandarins.
Yeah, don't get me started on those little jerks getting them to start eating in the beginning. They're a problem too. So,
there's an art to it, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And I told Rob at Kluberfest, I kind of stole your method out there as far as just putting them in those like 6-inch delis and just put them in
for a year.
Do it that way. Yep, you're staying right in there. We'll see what happens.
Yep.
So,
cool. So do you see any kind of, I mean, we talked a little bit about like the behavior, but is there any nuance or idiosyncratic elements to each species with its care? Like this one needs a little bit more water, this one eats more chicken hearts, or is it pretty much you kind of have this base model of approach to
I think that you sort of have to watch the individual animals because I have one female California red side that I got, and all she'll eat is rat pups. The gentleman that I got him from, that's all he fed her, and that's all she'll eat. So she's kind of my problem child, and I ended up having to cut the rat pup open and put fish parts inside just to give her some other things because I don't know if that's a complete diet for her, but that's all she wants to eat. So sometimes you have to work around the individual animals, and I've put chicken hearts inside there before. She'll eat a rat pup, but she will not eat anything else. She won't eat fish. She won't eat a mouse. No, she's just really fussy. I don't like to feed a lot of things with hair. Years ago, we had some big Eastern garters when we lived in Kentucky, and we actually had the female die from impaction. She was eating adult mice, and she was impacted with hair. So I don't like to feed hair. So I usually go with hairless mice or big pinky pup rats, but I don't like to do the hairy thing just because we had a problem.
I feel like I would get nervous on the pups with the fat content that they have, in a species that I guess, and again, I have we've had just a couple of the local garters that we would, keep on display here. But so I don't have a lot of experience keeping garters, but I've always viewed them as very opportunistic feeders. And
they are.
Some of the snakes that just have the most varied diet
They do.
of any species out there. So I guess it would just surprise me that there's one that's like, no, rat pups.
That's all she'll
rat
eat.
pups.
And I have tried. I held her off food for like a month trying to get her to eat something else. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll just feed you what you want. I'll just make it work. But no, that's all she wants. And that's just what she was raised on. And she just refuses to eat anything else. Even though the male takes other things and I put them together so she could watch him eat. She's like, okay, have it all. I don't want it. So, but
Wow.
I think when the Chapala garters from Mexico, they're a little drier. So I think having a lot of airflow for them is going to be really important. I haven't bred those yet. That'll be next year. I've got 3 adults and an albino male. So I've got 2.2, but that'll be next year till I breed those. I'm kind of excited about it. I haven't done those yet. So that'll be fun.
Are yours big?
My females are probably right now like 28, 29 inches. So they're getting there. They're not up to 3 feet yet.
Yeah.
So Rob always likes to come in and tell me what to do. And he was like, you can't breed those with their 3 feet. And I'll go, okay, fine, whatever. So we might get them up that size for next year.
Well, I can tell you that they'll breed smaller than that because I had.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, because you had babies.
Did I have a pair or did I have? I can't remember if it was 1.2 or 2.2. And then that was over the pandemic. And my former grad student, Lucas, who is on Carpets and Coffee in the MPR network, he was getting into garters. And I have a tendency to give my, move snakes on to students that want to, experiment. Sure. And so I sent him these Chapala garters that I told him they're juveniles. Like they were both at about 20. The males were tiny. The females were probably 20 inches, but we were cohabbing them all. And then I sent them to Lucas, and something happened in that plane ride in the FedEx box. But then he put him in the tank, and he was like, "Hey, these things are mating." And I was like, "No, they're not. They're juveniles." And then,
surprise!
Yeah, 4 months later, he got baby Chapalas, and then 4 months later, he got baby Chapalas, and then 4 months later, he got baby. He was literally inundated with the damn things, and I know that those females weren't quite to 3 feet. Now, they may have bred too early, and that's probably not the best thing. And I'll totally say that as a caveat, but.
Right.
I was under the impression they had to be big to breed, and they don't.
Oh, that's
and then
cool.
What was really funny is I sent him the Chapalas, and then he's like, I can't have all these. And so I ended up getting more freaking garter snakes mailed back to me than I sent to Luke. So,
that didn't work out for you, did it?
Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to move these things, and they're coming back. And
they're coming back in duplicate. That's fun.
That's funny. That's funny.
Well, there are a lot of garters I'd like to keep, but Ohio has a non-indigenous, can't do any indigenous species. So I can't do the albino easterns or any of the flames, and I can't do radix, which come in all the different colors. It really limits. You would have to get a permit, and you have to microchip them, and they want the babies microchipped. So I don't know how you'd microchip a baby garter. I'd like kill it. So I'm just like, okay, fine, forget it.
And that's just to point out, because I've been asked on more than one occasion about moving Colubrid Fest to Ohio. This is exactly why. I'm not taking a shot. But it's with Ohio. It's because in Ohio, it's not only natives. You can't even do color morphs.
No
natives
mutations
in Ohio. So like no black rat mutations. The garter mutations that it wipes out a lot. So that's why. And in Illinois, you fight a lot of that same thing. So that's why Indiana has been kind of that centralized Midwest that we do this in.
Well, I can't wait to do that again because it was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Colubrid Fest. Yes. It was fantastic. I had so much fun. I learned so much from all the speakers there, and I was just really captivated.
It was certainly a great time. And I'm sure you're going to know what saying I'm talking about, because this is why Wendy fell in love with you. Because I don't remember if we said this on the show or not, but Rob didn't want to go, right, Amy?
No, he wasn't going. He told me he wasn't going. I said, well, I'm going. So you can stay home, but you haven't for 20 years run around and said you're a no ball zone to not show up at the only show that has no ball pythons. And he goes, and he was so mad about it. He was mad for like 2 weeks. And he goes, I don't know. It's just going to be crap and it's just going to be stupid. And we're just going to be sitting there staring at each other. And I go, okay, then don't go. I'll go. And then he ended up going and having a great time and taking it all back.
He did. And I've shared that story that was one of the big points for me was when Rob came up and, he said, I was wrong. I was wrong. And it made so much. But when you talked about, because the saying that you said about, him coming is because he's the head of the house, right? How did you put it?
I had a friend whose grandmother told me one time that you let the husband be the head. Let him be the head of the house. That's perfectly fine. And you be the neck and you direct him anywhere you want to go.
I love that. I love that.
It works pretty well.
Perfect. It's so perfect. It's so true. That's great. That's great. Well, we're certainly glad that you came and certainly glad that you made him come as well, because you guys were a big part of that success. And
it was fantastic. We had a great time. We met so many people and we learned so much there. It was really amazing. The talks you had were really informative. The egg binding talk I learned so much from, and the feeding specialized feeder talk, I took so much away from those. I mean, I had my notes, and Mrs. Westmoreland came and asked me for my notes because she didn't bring her paper. I always have my notebook in my backpack.
Well, and I think Zac said it that, because there were so many individuals that were there that were big personalities in the hobby and in the industry. There was big personality, but there were no big egos. All those got left at the door, and I thought that was such a great point.
Oh, I agree. There's a lot of that in snakes now, a lot of that. And there wasn't any of that there. And that was so refreshing. I really thought that was great. Everybody was on equal footing. So that to me was, and the people that came there were educated and they knew what they wanted and they were focused, and it was really a great group of people.
It certainly was. There's no doubt about that. Good stuff.
So I can't wait till the next one.
But I'm already getting excited again thinking about it.
I know, me too.
How that went. What babies do you have available right now? What are some of the garters you have out there?
Currently, I've got some yearling normal checkered. I've got a few of the almost year-old now Oregon red spots. I've got some baby albino granites, and I've got some baby albino checkers.
Gotcha.
Right now.
Right.
That's what I have for this year. And then I'll be bringing those to we do the local shows here in Ohio, and then I think our next big show will be Tinley in March.
Look forward to seeing you guys there, as always.
We'll be there.
So I think we're going to move on. I'm very curious. So one of our questions we asked near the end of the show is, where do you see herpetoculture going in the future? Do you think that it's a positive trajectory, negative trajectory?
Same
as what the trajectory is.
Now, Zac, I'm the eternal optimist. So I'm going to say it is going to be straight up. Rob is going to tell you we're all going to be tanked and it's going to be terrible. But I'm always going to tell you that it is going to be fantastic. And, he's all worried about the legislation that's coming down the pike about that they did for birds that they're working on doing for reptiles.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to work around it. You just have to figure it out. You're not going to change it. You're not going to be able to fight all the government. They are going to have legislation that's going to come down to do with reptiles, and you just have to work around it. So, we'll find a way to make it work. We always do.
Absolutely.
Been doing that for 30 years.
What do you see in the reptile community?
There's a lot more education. I think it's really interesting that when we started, there was like no products for reptiles whatsoever. And this fan you're talking about, I think that's fascinating. There are so many animals I think can benefit from that. I can see it work really well for garters. Rob actually in the Mandarin room is having problems with not enough ventilation in the rack system that he had. And he actually put an oscillating fan in that room just to keep the air moving to try to get more air going through there. But I think that kind of thing is really interesting, that, the products are actually being made that are useful and helpful. The
Yeah.
UVB lighting, I think, is really cool.
Mhm.
There's a whole bunch of foggers and misters and different things that, you can put on intervals now, as well as light timers. And it makes it so much easier to keep it than having to run up and down stairs and turn everything on every day, which what we used to have to do.
Yeah.
Plug it all in and then unplug it at night.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think all those things are all advances that just help with the animals and help with their care and their health, honestly. And food, there's so many more options, like you were talking about the scenting. There's so many things available now that weren't, because it used to just be you had rats and mice and maybe rabbits and maybe quail, but now there's a lot of other options available. And which has brought a lot of these lizard eating type snakes into the hobby that, before you couldn't get a viable source for a lizard that you could feed.
Mhm.
So I think all those things make it really more positive and just add different aspects to the whole herpetoculture.
Very
Everybody
cool.
doesn't have to breed a boa. You don't have to keep a corn snake. You can keep what you like.
Mhm.
Because back in
Right.
the old days, everything was disposable. You got whatever it was and you hoped you could keep it alive because you really didn't know what you were doing. And now we're a lot better at it.
Yeah, a lot more information out there, and it seems like there just continues to be more and more information every day.
Every day.
As soon as you think you know it, it's
yeah.
no.
Get that figured.
Oh, it
These are-
changes all the time.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about it. It's always evolving and you just have to stay with it.
Very cool.
All righty. Well, any final thoughts? Are there any garter species? We'll leave it with this, that you want to work with or would love to get your hands on, or
I had Pickering Eye in the past, and I really, really like them from Washington State. I really like those garters. I ended up losing my colony to a thermostat debacle, so I don't have those now, but I do. There are a couple of species that Trenton West has that I really want. He's got some obscure garter species that I really like, and he's another garter guy that he's an up and comer, really nice young fella. But yeah, there are a lot of really cool garters. It's just finding time and space to put them in.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like collecting anything. There's a lot of things that you want, but you don't know that you really need them.
Yep.
Clint Bartley.
And that's maturity right there. That's maturity is when you realize, because people, it's funny because I'll have customers come in, they're like, oh, I don't need another snake, and I go, you didn't need the first one.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't
That's
need
right.
any of them. It's we
right.
don't want them, and it's okay to
Yep.
just admit that. But it's the maturity when you're like, I've reached my limit. I've got to settle down.
Well, it's really funny. Years ago, Al Zulich would always say that he had a number that he could only maintain. I don't remember what the number was, like 47 snakes. And we always thought it was really funny because at that time, we were just acquiring. But there's a certain sense to that if you know what your space and limitations are and your time. And I've got 6 grandkids now, and I'd like to travel and do things I want to do. So I enjoy the snakes that I have, but it has to be workable and they have to be able to be cared for. So it's all like moderation. Have to keep it all in balance.
There you go.
Well, yeah, and I think that's where it comes down to, where sometimes we look at it as, well, this is how many I can fit in the space. But I think maturity comes with how many can I fit in my time?
Right.
I may have the space. How many can I fit and still properly take care of them the way that they should be?
And have a life. There has to be a work-life balance. That's
Yeah.
the whole thing. And you have to be able, anything you do and it becomes a job, kind of loses the fun part of it. So it needs to be exciting and fun. And I enjoy going in the snake room and I enjoy looking and seeing what babies, and I enjoy feeding them. So for me, it's still fun. I enjoy all that.
There you go.
Love it.
All righty.
Thank you,
Well,
gentlemen.
people, what was that?
I said, thank you, gentlemen, for having me on.
Oh,
I appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Mike was all ours, Amy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel the need to say this out loud, and I don't know if you and Rob know this, but when I got back in, you guys helped us, you helped the school. So I've always kind of looked at you guys as mentors.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, we always like to help. I've always helped teachers. When we had our pet shop before, we always would give snakes to teachers and for their classrooms. And, we always try to help because education, that's where our kids come from. And if they don't have an appreciation, then they won't appreciate what we do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. I just wanted to say that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. No worries. All right. So if people want to reach out to you and, you know, they're interested in a garter snake, or let's be real, old worlds, or any of the other amazing animals that you and Rob with Zerkle Reptiles take care of, where do you recommend they go to reach out to you?
Facebook is easy. You can go Amy Zerkle on Facebook, or and my face is on there, or Zerkle Reptile Company. Either one. Either one is perfectly fine. And I'm always happy to talk snake chat.
No, awesome.
My pleasure.
Okay. Well, anybody that wants to get a hold of me, you can get me at Zac Loughman on Facebook, Dr. Crawdad on Instagram, and then email zloughman@westliberty.edu. So yeah, I guess this is a quick update. We put an ad out for the indigo snake metabolic study for grad student, and I am very happy to say that we've got several people applying that are pretty awesome, and it warms my heart to read in the little student statements that I've been listening to you on CCR for the past 2 years. Like,
oh wow,
somebody said to me, "Is that more important than their GPA?" And I was like, "Of course it is." So let's just be real. So, because if you're listening to this nerdy podcast, you're the kind of person I want in my lab. Like that's it. So anyway,
I understand that.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's my little final, I guess, update. Clint, people want to reach out to you. Where do they go?
Metazotics@gmail.com. On Facebook, it's Clint Bartley or Metazotics. You can also get us on Instagram, MetazoticsLLC. As always, you can see I think we're somewhere over 400 and we're almost at 500 animals on the website right now, individually photographed.
Wow.
Yeah, tell me about it. For the most part, anyway. Metazotics.com. We can also take care of any supplies that you need. And as always, if you're a listener, please use CC Radio at checkout to save yourself 5% on anything that you get.
Yep. And as a final reminder, go to Colubrid and colubroidradio.com.
There you go. You nailed it.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to say. And check out the new website. And I want to thank our man behind the screen, who you all can't see, Max, for once again giving us his maximum effort, because he's the one that just reminded us to mention the website again, because I totally wasn't. So with that being said, be it morning, afternoon, evening, or night, whatever time of day it is, I hope you have a good one. Later. Thank you for listening.